Welcome back. For the next 6 weeks, we're going to talk about a big question. Who am I? Who are you? Lots of your childhood and teenage years and young adulthood will be spent trying to figure out who are you. Lots of people will try to help you, your parents, your teachers, your friends. That is great. Lots of those people can help you figure out what kind of job you should do, what talents you have, what you're good at. But nobody, not even yourself, knows you as well as Jesus. Why? That's because he's the one who made you. Over the next few weeks, we're going to see what the Bible says about who God says you are. We're going to see that you are perfectly designed, fully loved, and that you have an eternal mission and purpose. Your leader is going to give you a piece of paper, or maybe your parents if you're watching this at home. On one side, I want you to write things you like about yourself. And on the other side, write down things that you don't like about yourself. Your leaders have already done this, and they can probably share some examples first. Here's mine. I love that I'm creative and I have lots of ideas and I work really hard and I'm smart, as in like it's easy for me to remember what I hear and learn in like a school traditional format. I'm passionate and I'm really excited about things that really eternally matter. But I'm also loud and I always feel like I have to share my opinion and interrupt other people and bulldoze them. And I don't seem to see it till after. And I'm too tall and my feet are too big and I have these stupid bags under my eyes. And I'm physically awkward with no grace or poise or athletic ability. And I'm impatient and I'm too passionate about a bunch of things that don't matter. What are yours? Save those lists because we're going to use them later on. Today we're going to start by reading from Psalm 139. Working with a partner as best you can or the people around you, read the verses 1 to 6 and make a list of everything it says about who God says you are. Psalm 139, verses 1 to 6. Lord, you have seen what's in my heart. You know all about me. You know when I sit down and when I get up. You know what I'm thinking, even though you're far away. You know when I go out to work and when I come back home. You know exactly how I live. Lord, even before I speak a word, you know all about it. You are all around me, behind me, and in front of me. You hold me safe in your hand, and I'm amazed at how well you know me. It's more than I can understand. Now, we're going to skip down and read verses 13 to 18. You created the deepest parts of my being. You put me together inside my mother's body. How you made me is amazing and wonderful, and I praise you for that. What you have done is wonderful, and I know that very well. None of my bones were hidden from you when you made me inside my mother's body. That place was as dark as the deepest parts of the earth. When you were putting me together there, your eyes saw my body even before it was formed. You planned how many days I would live. You wrote down the number of them in your book before I had lived even one of them. God, your thoughts about me are priceless. No one can possibly add them all up. If you could count them, they would be more than the grains of sand. If I were to fall asleep counting and then wake up, you would still be there with me. This is amazing. This means while you were a baby inside your mother's tummy, God was making all the parts of you. And verse 17 says that God thinks about you, that he thinks about you so much that it's more than all the grains of sand. Does God make any mistakes? Then did God make any mistakes when he made you? No, a baby is never, ever a mistake, is never a bad thing. Sometimes people have babies growing inside them and they didn't plan on having a baby and they don't want or aren't able to be that child's parent. Does that mean that the baby is a mistake? No, that baby should be born. God made him or her and designed him or her. And as a church, it's our job to take care of babies that don't have parents to take care of them. God made you on purpose. You weren't an accident. But sometimes it doesn't feel like he made us perfect when he made us. Sometimes it feels like the way we're made is no good. Look at the list you made again. Those things you don't like about yourself, some of them are a result of your sin, of the bad things that you do or the wrong ways you're thinking. Like my pridefulness makes me in the moment interrupt people and think that what I have to say is the most important, so I should say no matter what. But that's not the way you were made. The way God made you is not a mistake. Your hair is the color God made it to be. You are exactly as tall right now as God decided you should be. And let's say you're diagnosed with ADHD. I bet that feels like a mistake. And I know it makes school hard and probably this group you're in right now hard too. But it's not a mistake. It's a way you're kind of more like God. You can pay attention to so many things at once, just like God. That's not a mistake in you. It's his design. And we'll talk about in the coming weeks how it is part of the purpose he has for you. My interrupting people is a sin, but it comes from something good God made in me. The loudness that I don't like comes from the same place that makes me care deeply about sharing the truth with people, that God made in me to share his truth with people. Sometimes things you might think of as a weakness, things that are maybe a weakness, are actually the backside of a front side strength. They're actually the way something that God put in you that's like himself gets twisted by sin, by the wrong things that we do. Let me give you an example. So my loudness, something I don't really like about myself. Yeah, that comes and is twisted by my sin, my pride, my thinking I'm right or that I should be in charge, my desire to have control. But it's only twisted by that. It actually comes from something that God put inside me that reflects who he is and the way he made me. Like to be a leader or to love to teach people. And most of all, to be able to cast vision about things that are important to him. These are things that reflect who God is and how he made me. And it's the sin in me that twists that into something ugly that I and other people don't like. But my sin doesn't trump or override the image of God in me, and neither does yours. I want you guys now to take a minute to think about something that maybe is a weakness for you. And maybe with the help of some of the adults around you can help you figure out how that's actually just maybe a twisting or a manipulation of a strength that God put in you. Like maybe you're kind of a know-it-all and you like to be right all the time. Well, you know what? That comes from something amazing that God put in you. The desire to have people know the truth and to know the truth yourself and to be interested and curious in things. You know, maybe you get angry really easily, but maybe that's because you care so deeply about things being right and just and fair. Maybe you're shy and really introverted and you don't like that because you're scared of people, but maybe it's because you listen deeply and you care deeply about a small number of people and you love them. Take a few minutes. This is going to be a little tricky. Leaders or adults with your kids, you're probably going to have to help them out and speak into their lives when they're going to tell you some of those weaknesses. Pause the video and do that now. And even if it doesn't feel like it now, God has a purpose for what seems to you like a mistake. And in following Jesus, he can help you become who you really are. In following Jesus year after year, this has become a little bit less of an effect. And I'm able to use my loudness more for God's kingdom than for destroying myself and others. We're going to talk way more next week about what it means to be made in the image of God. But let's watch this video to help us start thinking about what that actually means.
So if you lived in ancient Bible times, odds are you lived under the authority of a king.
And many of these kings claimed that they were gods, and they would even call themselves the image of God.
Meaning they had authority to tell people what to do, order things to be made.
Yeah, they got to define good and evil. And these kings would often make statues of themselves, which in Hebrew were called tselem, often translated as idol or image.
But for Israel, they didn't view their kings as the God. In fact, they were never supposed to even make images of God.
It's exactly right, and that was really unique for that time and culture. This is rooted, first of all, in Israel's belief that you can't reduce the creator God down to any one thing in creation. But there's another reason. People aren't to make images of God because God has already made images of himself.
When did he do that?
Well, let's go to page 1 of the Bible. And the first person we meet there is God. He's the one with authority over all creation. He speaks and creation obeys, and he defines what is good and not good. In other words, he alone is king. But then surprisingly, as the pinnacle of all of God's creative work, he makes humans, and he calls all of them the image of God.
So he gives all humans the authority to rule.
Exactly, that's what he goes on to say. He tells the humans to subdue the earth and to rule it. And so this task that once belonged only to elite kings is here in the Bible the task of every human being. This was a revolutionary statement in its day because all humans are being called to rule and to participate in the human project.
So what does this mean? I mean, how are we all supposed to rule?
So the picture we get in Genesis is gardening.
Gardening?
Yes. Gardening. So they rule the earth by cultivating it, by harnessing all of the earth's raw potential and then making something more and new out of it.
So growing food for each other.
Yes, but that also includes growing families then, which become neighborhoods, and then they create communities where people are going to work and take care of each other and build businesses and cities that will expand to new places and so on.
So ruling is really the day-to-day acts of our work and creativity.
Yes, we take the world somewhere. This is humanity's divine and sacred task.
Yeah, and this all sounds really nice. And humans have designed some pretty great things. But just as often we create things that cause a lot of suffering and a lot of injustice. So maybe we shouldn't actually be ruling.
Yeah, so the Bible addresses this. In Genesis, what happens is that God gives humans a choice about how they're going to rule. So are they going to use their authority for the benefit of others, which is God's definition of good, or are they going to turn away and define good and evil for themselves and use their authority for self-advantage?
And in the story, they choose to define good and evil on their own terms.
And so this is the Bible's depiction of the human condition. So sometimes we pull off amazingly good stuff, but just as often, despite our best intentions, we act selfishly and we create evil in the world.
And so we're stuck as mediocre rulers making a mess of things.
But that's not the end of the story. So the Bible goes on and it makes this claim that all of this was resolved when God bound himself to humanity through Jesus. And he showed us what it looks like to truly rule as a human.
So what does it look like?
Well, Jesus ruled by serving and by seeking the best for others, by putting himself underneath them and loving not just his friends, but also his enemies.
And that's not a typical way to rule.
And not only that, Jesus confronted the consequences of all of the evil and the death that we have created by our messed up ways of ruling. And he takes it. I mean, he lets it kill him. And so when the New Testament writers looked back to Jesus' resurrection, they see a whole new future opening up for all humanity.
Jesus is a new way to be human.
Yeah, that's why they called Jesus the image of God, or the new human. And not only that, they also believe that Jesus' divine life and power is now available to heal and to transform us to become our life and power.
And this sounds really nice, but what does it really look like?
So practically, the Apostle Paul said it looks like people being filled by Jesus' own presence and spirit, filled with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and integrity and gentleness and self-control. He says this is the new humanity that God wants to create in us, so that we become people in whom God's image is being restored, people who will move the human project forward. And that's actually how the story of the Bible ends. It's a renewed world where God is on his throne and his servants are all around him, but they're the ones ruling over this new world, taking it into new, uncharted territory with Jesus as their healer and their guide.
Back in the Roman Empire, before Jesus was born, before he started changing the world and his disciples did after him, might made right. There were people who were better than other people because they were stronger or richer or had more power. It's only founded in this idea that we're all made in the image of God, where we can start to have a hope of living in a society and a world where all people, regardless of what they look like, what their abilities or disabilities are, what they believe or think or do, are considered valuable and of worth. And that comes from believing we're all made in the image of God, that we're all perfectly designed. Who is hard for you to remember is made in the image of God? Leaders, you can share first. But what about some of these things that are wrong with me, not because of anything bad I do? Like, what about my feet being too big? Well, some of these things that we don't like about ourselves, like about our bodies, like my feet being too big or being awkward or clumsy, they're not actually things that are wrong with us. They're things we don't like because they don't seem to fit into, maybe for me, a society's idea of what a beautiful or pretty woman would look like. So there's not actually something wrong with me. There's something wrong with how I'm thinking and how I'm caring about what other people would think and how they view me instead of who God says I am. But what about things like disabilities? What about people who are born with things that are actually like horrible diseases and things that are wrong with them? What about that? We are going to read a story about someone who definitely thought there was a mistake in how he was made.
As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus. "But this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming, when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." After saying this, he spat on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Told him, "Wash in the pool of Siloam." This word means sent. So the man went and washed. and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, "Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg?" Some claimed that he was. Others said, "No, he only looks like him." But he himself insisted, "I am the man." "How then were your eyes opened?" they asked. He replied, "The man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see." "Where is this man?" they asked him. "I don't know," he said.
What does Jesus say? Was this man blind because he was bad? Because his parents were bad? No, he was blind. And Jesus used that weakness of this man to show God's glory. God can do this in your life too. He can take even bad things that happen to you and redeem them. Even sickness and disabilities that people are born with, God can heal and redeem in amazing ways. Does Jesus heal everyone? In this story we just watched and listened to, there were a ton of sick people lying around the temple. Did Jesus heal all of them? He didn't. He only healed one of them. Jesus doesn't heal everyone in his life. Even when we pray for them, Jesus doesn't make bad sickness happen as punishment for sin, but he doesn't always heal it. Some sickness, I don't know if you think of lung cancer, sometimes result from people's bad decisions, or like people's bad decisions like air pollution cause lung cancer. And some just happens because we live in a world broken by sin, groaning to be made new. And one day it will be because of what Jesus did on the cross. He defeated sin and sickness and death and rose again. And one day he will return heaven to earth, his dwelling place to ours, resurrecting those who are in him to new bodies. And the whole world will be resurrected into a place where there's no more tears and no more death. We're going to pray and each go around in a circle and thank God for one thing about the way God made you.